The Fall of the Ottoman Empire, a multifaceted analysis. The Ottoman Empire was a vast and complex geopolitical entity that existed from around 1299 to 1922. At the height of its power, the empire controlled territories in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Despite its longevity and military prowess, the empire eventually declined and fell, and understanding why this happened is a subject of ongoing debate among historians. There are internal as well as external factors which participated in the fall of the Ottoman Empire. They are 1. Political instability. Political instability was a cornerstone in the unraveling of the once mighty Ottoman Empire, which at its zenith controlled vast swaths of land stretching from the gates of Vienna to the heart of the Arab world. Understanding how political instability contributed to the empire's decline requires a nuanced look at several interconnected elements, from succession crises to internal power struggles. 2. Succession crises. The Ottoman Empire had no established law of succession, which meant that upon the death of a sultan, his sons often fought among themselves for control of the throne. Initially, this practice had a brutal sort of efficacy. It ensured that the most cunning and capable son would become the sultan. However, as time passed, these succession battles turned increasingly destructive. During the empire's later period, from the 17th century onwards, these contests for succession often led to the imprisonment or execution of some of the most talented individuals in the empire, simply because they posed a threat to the ruling sultan. Resources were diverted for these internal struggles, weakening the empire externally. Furthermore, the Janissaries, the elite fighting force of the empire, often got involved in these succession crises, eroding their role as an apolitical military force and introducing corruption and inefficiency into the military system. 3. Factionalism and the role of the Janissaries. While the Janissaries had initially been a source of military strength, their evolving role in Ottoman politics became a liability. From the 16th century onwards, the Janissaries increasingly became involved in domestic politics. They realized that their military power could be translated into political influence and began to interfere in matters of state and succession. Their involvement led to political instability, as they would sometimes support weaker sultans who would be more willing to bend to their interests, further weakening centralized authority. 4. Administrative corruption. Corruption was rampant in the Ottoman bureaucracy. Bribery, embezzlement, and nepotism weakened the efficient administration of the empire. In many cases, high-ranking officials were more interested in enriching themselves than in serving the state. As the fiscal resources of the state were siphoned off, this left fewer resources for vital institutions, such as the military and infrastructure, which led to a decline in the empire's defensive and administrative capabilities. 5. The influence of women in the imperial harem. Traditionally, historians have pointed to the influence of the imperial harem as a source of political instability, although this is a topic of ongoing debate. The mothers and wives of sultans often wielded significant influence, and at times, factions within the harem became as powerful as factions within the court. The term Sultanate of Women was coined to describe periods when women from the harem effectively controlled the empire, usually through a young or weak sultan. These internal struggles for power within the harem often had implications that rippled throughout the empire, leading to political instability. 6. Decay of central authority. As the central authority weakened, regional governors, known as pashas, began to accumulate more power. These pashas sometimes acted almost as independent rulers and failed to send tax revenues to the capital, which in turn led to financial crises at the center. Moreover, they would often create private armies, further undermining the centralized military control that was crucial for the empire's survival. Conclusion. Political instability was a significant factor in the decline and eventual collapse of the Ottoman Empire. From succession crises to the transformation of elite military units into political factions, multiple elements contributed to the erosion of centralized power. Administrative corruption and the devolution of authority to regional governors exacerbated these issues, making it difficult for the empire to respond effectively to both internal and external challenges. While not the sole cause of the empire's fall, political instability was a catalyst that accelerated its decline, leaving it vulnerable to the host of other challenges it faced in its twilight years. Economic decline and the fall of the Ottoman Empire. The decline of the Ottoman Empire was not solely due to military failures or political instability. Its economic frailty played an equally important role in shaping its downfall. Like many other empires throughout history, the economic backbone of the Ottoman Empire was closely linked with its military and political might. This symbiotic relationship made economic decline all the more devastating as it led to a decrease in available resources for military expansion and maintenance. 1. Inflation and currency devaluation. One of the first indicators of economic decline was the rampant inflation and devaluation of currency. For much of its history, the Ottoman Empire had a strong and stable currency, but by the 17th century this was no longer the case. The empire started facing difficulties in maintaining the value of its currency due to a combination of expensive wars, corruption, and inefficiencies in tax collection. Furthermore, the influx of silver from the Americas into Europe resulted in price increases that affected the empire. Inflation led to higher costs of goods and increased the economic burden on both the state and the people, diminishing the quality of life and causing social unrest. 2. Increasing debt. Another issue that plagued the Ottoman economy was increasing debt. Especially in the 19th century, the empire had to rely more and more on European loans at exorbitant interest rates. Initially, these loans were used for modernization efforts and to finance wars, but eventually they became a means to maintain the empire's bureaucracy and military. The debt burden became increasingly unsustainable and led to financial dependency on European powers, eroding the empire's sovereignty and limiting its economic and political choices. 3. Loss of trading opportunities. During its heyday, the Ottoman Empire was a dominant trading power, controlling crucial land routes between Asia and Europe. The empire benefited immensely from the Silk Road and other trade routes. However, the discovery of sea routes to Asia and the New World by European explorers shifted the focus of trade away from the land routes controlled by the Ottomans. Moreover, European powers, particularly the British Empire, established new trading routes that bypassed Ottoman-controlled territories. This loss of trading monopoly led to decreased revenue and further strained the empire's finances. 4. Decline of craftsmanship and manufacturing. An often overlooked aspect of the Ottoman economic decline is the degradation of local industries and craftsmanship. The influx of cheaper European goods, facilitated by improved maritime trade, led to a decline in traditional Ottoman crafts and industries. This decline was not only an economic loss, but also a cultural one. The inability of local industries to compete with European manufacturers further exacerbated unemployment and poverty within the empire. 5. Failure to modernize. While European nations were experiencing the Industrial Revolution, the Ottoman Empire lagged in adopting new methods of production and management. Attempts at modernization, like the Tanzimat reforms, were often too late or insufficiently implemented. The empire's failure to modernize its economy meant that it could not compete with the rapidly industrializing European powers. This industrial gap translated into military weaknesses as well, as the empire could not produce the advanced weaponry and ships that their European counterparts could. 6. Impact on military capabilities. The economic decline had a direct impact on the empire's military capabilities. Lack of funds meant outdated weaponry, insufficient training, and poor logistics. This weakened military power made it increasingly difficult for the empire to defend its vast territories against both internal revolts and external threats, thus forming a vicious cycle where economic decline led to military failure, which further damaged the economy. Conclusion. The economic decline of the Ottoman Empire was a multifaceted issue, fueled by inflation, debt, loss of trade revenue, decline in manufacturing, and a failure to modernize. These economic troubles drained the empire's resources, hindering its ability to maintain a strong military or implement much-needed reforms. The financial downturn wasn't just a symptom of the empire's decline. It was a catalyst that accelerated its fall. By undermining the empire's military and political institutions, economic decline rendered the empire increasingly vulnerable, setting the stage for its eventual disintegration. Role of corruption and decentralization in the decline of the Ottoman Empire. Among the varied factors contributing to the decline of the Ottoman Empire, corruption and decentralization stand out as critical issues that exacerbated internal weaknesses and facilitated external threats. The significance of these factors can be understood through their pervasive effects on the empire's bureaucracy, military, and governance systems, which were the pillars of Ottoman might for centuries. 1. Rampant corruption in the bureaucracy. The Ottoman Empire had a complex bureaucratic system that, at its peak, was highly effective and efficient. However, over time, the bureaucracy became increasingly corrupt, undermining the empire's stability. Jobs in the bureaucracy became hereditary and were often sold to the highest bidder, rather than being awarded based on merit. As a result, many government officials were more interested in enriching themselves than serving the empire. The corruption led to inefficient tax collection, inadequate administration, and the gradual erosion of public trust in the government. 2. Corruption in the military. Much like the bureaucracy, corruption also permeated the military, particularly within the ranks of the Janissaries. The Janissaries, originally an elite military force, became increasingly involved in political machinations and corrupt practices. They would often side with less competent leaders who promised them more benefits, thereby weakening the empire's military capabilities. Moreover, funds allocated for military upgradation and logistics were often misused, leading to an outdated and demoralized army. 3. Decentralization and its effects. While corruption eroded the empire from within, decentralization made it vulnerable from without. The empire had grown too vast, and as central authority weakened, it became increasingly difficult to administer the far-flung territories effectively. Regional governors, or pashas, began to assert more autonomy, often maintaining their private militias and collecting taxes that they would not fully remit to the central treasury. This created a patchwork of semi-autonomous regions that were Ottoman in name, but acted independently, complicating efforts for centralized reforms or coordinated military action. 4. Power accumulation by regional leaders. Decentralization gave way to regional leaders accumulating more power, often challenging the central authority. Some of these regional power centers, like Egypt under Muhammad Ali Pasha in the early 19th century, even dared to confront the Ottoman army, further highlighting the empire's loss of control over its territories. Regional leaders were also increasingly cutting deals with foreign powers, further undermining the empire's unity and exposing it to external manipulation. 5. Legal and judicial decay. The judicial system, once a cornerstone of Ottoman administration, was also not immune to corruption and decentralization. Judges, or qadis, increasingly became susceptible to bribes and political pressures, eroding the rule of law. The local rulers often ignored rulings from the central legal bodies, demonstrating the diminishing reach of the central authority. 6. Long-term impact on reforms. Efforts like the Tanzimat reforms in the 19th century aimed at modernizing the empire and mitigating corruption. However, these reforms were met with resistance from corrupt officials and local power centers that benefited from the status quo. The corrupt practices had become so ingrained in the system that even well-intentioned reforms could not be fully implemented, leading to half measures that neither satisfied the demands for modernization nor alleviated the problems the empire faced. 7. Erosion of public trust. The public's trust in the government dwindled as corruption and decentralization intensified. Civil unrest, revolts, and dissatisfaction among the populace grew, making governance even more challenging. A weakened, corrupt central authority had neither the legitimacy nor the capability to address these issues effectively. Conclusion. In summary, corruption and decentralization were lethal blows to the Ottoman Empire's once robust administrative and military systems. Corruption eroded the empire from within, creating inefficiencies, breeding discontent, and impairing vital functions like tax collection and law enforcement. Meanwhile, decentralization rendered the empire fragmented and vulnerable, undermining any efforts for reform or modernization. Both these factors fed into a vicious cycle. each exacerbating the other, and collectively hastened the empire's decline. It is difficult to imagine how the empire could have sustained itself in the long run with such deeply rooted internal challenges, even if it had not faced the multitude of external pressures that it eventually did. European expansion and rivalries, undermining the Ottoman Empire. The rise of European states during the early modern period had a profound impact on the decline of the Ottoman Empire. As new powers emerged, fortified by economic prosperity, technological advances, and colonial expansion, the Ottomans found themselves increasingly beleaguered. The geopolitical landscape of the time, punctuated by the ascendancy of formidable European empires like the Habsburg Empire and Russia, posed direct challenges to Ottoman territorial integrity. The discovery of sea routes to Asia and the New World further marginalized the empire's economic significance. 1. The Habsburg threat. The Ottoman-Habsburg rivalry spanned several centuries, featuring numerous military confrontations. However, the power dynamics between the two empires shifted gradually. During the 16th century, the Ottomans posed a significant threat to the Habsburgs, epitomized by the Ottoman sieges of Vienna. But as the Habsburg Empire consolidated its power, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries, it began to challenge the Ottomans more effectively. This was partly due to the Habsburgs' strategic alliances with other European powers, and partly because of their military modernization, which outpaced the Ottomans' own efforts. 2. The Russian factor. Russia emerged as another potent rival that consistently sought to chip away at Ottoman territories. The Russo-Turkish wars in the 18th and 19th centuries were devastating for the Ottoman Empire. Russia's aspirations to access warm water ports made the Ottoman-controlled Black Sea a constant battleground. Defeats at the hands of Russia resulted in significant territorial losses and severely weakened the Ottoman military. 3. Technological and tactical disparities. The Ottomans' military technology and tactics, which had once been cutting-edge, began to lag behind those of European powers. The European states adapted newer military technologies and developed more effective tactical doctrines, often learning from their colonial endeavors. The Ottomans, constrained by technological stagnation and internal issues, couldn't keep up, rendering them increasingly vulnerable in confrontations with European rivals. 4. The discovery of sea routes. The age of exploration, led by European maritime powers like Spain and Portugal, altered global trade dynamics. The discovery of sea routes to Asia and the New World undermined the Ottoman Empire's economic stronghold. The empire had previously benefited from its control over land-based trade routes, particularly those linking Europe and Asia. The maritime shift meant that goods could bypass Ottoman-controlled territories, leading to a significant loss of revenue. This economic setback weakened the empire's ability to finance military campaigns and internal reforms. 5. Colonialism and resource influx. European colonialism had another indirect but profound impact on the Ottoman Empire. The vast wealth flowing into Europe from colonies enriched European states, enabling them to invest in military technology and infrastructural development. The Ottomans, without such colonial revenue streams, found it increasingly difficult to match European powers in military and economic capabilities. 6. Diplomatic isolation. As European powers grew stronger, they also became more cohesive in their diplomatic efforts to contain Ottoman influence. Treaties often sidelined the Ottomans, and diplomatic alliances were formed to counter Ottoman military campaigns. This isolation left the empire with fewer allies and made it susceptible to multi-front conflicts, further straining its already limited resources. 7. European ideas and nationalism. The spread of European ideas like nationalism also disrupted the Ottoman Empire's internal cohesion. Various ethnic and religious groups within the empire became influenced by European concepts of nationhood, leading to internal revolts and demands for autonomy. This ideological encroachment added another layer of complexity to the empire's declining stability. Conclusion. In summary, the rise of European powers played a pivotal role in the decline of the Ottoman Empire. The ascendancy of the Habsburg Empire and Russia presented direct military challenges, made more acute by the Ottomans' lagging military capabilities. The shift in global trade routes due to European maritime discoveries eroded the economic base of the empire. The resources and ideas flowing into Europe from colonial expansion and the Enlightenment further widened the gap between Europe and the Ottoman Empire, both materially and ideologically. Thus, the Ottoman decline can be seen as part of a broader realignment of power in the world, where European states ascended at the expense of older empires. Constrained by economic, technological, and diplomatic factors, the Ottoman Empire could not adapt to the rapidly changing geopolitical landscape, leading to its eventual dissolution. Nationalism and the fragmentation of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, at its peak, was an expansive realm comprising various ethnic, religious, and cultural groups. It was a sprawling, multinational state that stretched across 3 continents. For much of its history, it managed to maintain a semblance of unity by adopting a flexible approach to governance, allowing considerable autonomy to its diverse constituents. However, the rise of nationalism in the 19th century significantly challenged this delicate balance, leading to internal discord and contributing to the empire's decline. 1. The millet system, a tenuous unity. The Ottomans governed their multi-ethnic empire through a system known as the millet, which organized communities based on religious affiliations rather than ethnic identities. The millet system allowed non-Muslim communities considerable autonomy in matters such as religious practice, education, and legal disputes. This somewhat pluralistic approach was initially effective in maintaining internal stability, but it also sowed the seeds for future divisiveness by allowing distinct identities to remain entrenched. 2. The European export of nationalism. The spread of nationalist ideas, often fueled by the intellectual currents of the European Enlightenment and the impact of events like the French Revolution, penetrated the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. These ideas often found fertile ground among the empire's educated elites and expatriate communities, who were exposed to European philosophies and political ideologies. Nationalism contradicted the very foundations of Ottoman governance, which prioritized religious identity over ethnic identity. The concept of a nation-state, based on a shared language, culture, and territory, was antithetical to the empire's multi-ethnic, multi-religious composition. 3. Ethnic and religious groups, from cohesion to separatism. The empire's diverse population included Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Armenians, Kurds, and many others. As the influence of nationalism grew, these groups increasingly saw themselves as distinct nations deserving of self-determination. This shift began to manifest in various forms, including cultural revivals, literary movements, and political activism aimed at greater autonomy or complete independence. 4. The Greek War of Independence. One of the first and most prominent expressions of nationalism leading to direct conflict within the empire was the Greek War of Independence in 1821. Energized by the ideas of liberty and national identity, the Greeks successfully revolted against Ottoman rule, culminating in the recognition of Greece as an independent state in 1830. This not only resulted in territorial loss for the empire, but also inspired other nationalist movements. 4. The Balkans, a hotbed of nationalism. The Balkans were particularly volatile, featuring a mix of ethnic groups including Serbs, Bulgarians, and Albanians, among others. The 19th century saw a series of uprisings and conflicts in the region, driven by nationalist fervor. The Treaty of Berlin in 1878 was a significant setback for the empire, as it led to the independence or semi-independence of several Balkan territories. 5. Arab nationalism. Although it emerged somewhat later than in the Balkans or among the Greeks, Arab nationalism became another significant centrifugal force. Intellectual currents and dissatisfaction with Ottoman rule led to the demand for greater Arab autonomy, most notably during World War I with the Arab Revolt. 6. Internal reforms and their limitations. The empire attempted to quell nationalist aspirations through various reforms, such as the Tanzimat and later the Young Turk Revolution. However, these often had the unintended consequence of strengthening nationalist sentiment by creating more structured, centralized, and thus national administrative entities. Moreover, reforms like the imposition of the Turkish language angered non-Turkish communities, exacerbating nationalist tendencies. Conclusion: the rise of nationalism in the 19th century severely undermined the Ottoman Empire's unity. As different ethnic and cultural groups sought to assert their independence or autonomy, the empire found itself increasingly embroiled in internal conflicts and territorial losses. Its attempts to suppress or co-opt nationalist movements largely failed, often backfiring and fueling further discontent. Nationalism, therefore, served as both a symptom and a catalyst of the empire's decay, weakening its internal cohesion at a time when it was already facing significant external threats. The consequence was a gradual erosion of the empire's territorial integrity and a significant undermining of its ability to govern a diverse population effectively, eventually contributing to its disintegration. World War I, the final nail in the Ottoman Empire's coffin. World War I represents a watershed moment in the history of the Ottoman Empire, delivering the final blow to an already crumbling polity. The empire's decision to side with the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary, proved disastrous, as it led not only to military defeat, but also to territorial disintegration, foreign occupation, and ultimately its dissolution. The subsequent treaties, especially the Treaty of Sèvres, formalized its partition among the Allied powers, creating a vastly reduced state that would eventually evolve into modern Turkey. 1. A risky alliance: the Ottomans and the Central Powers. When the war broke out in 1914, the Ottoman Empire was already grappling with internal strife and external threats. A depleted treasury, multiple fronts of unrest, and an outdated military made it a vulnerable player on the global stage. Its decision to align with the Central Powers was fueled by several considerations. One was the enmity with Russia, a member of the Allied powers, which had been a long-time adversary and posed a direct threat to Ottoman territorial integrity. Another reason was the promise of German military assistance, which the Ottomans desperately needed. 2. The military front, a landscape of losses. The Ottoman military faced multiple fronts during World War I. The Gallipoli campaign, while not a defeat, consumed enormous resources and led to heavy casualties. The front in Mesopotamia ended in disaster with the surrender of the Ottoman Sixth Army at Kut al-Amara. In Palestine and Syria, the empire faced off against British and Arab forces, which culminated in the loss of Jerusalem and eventually Damascus. The Caucasus front against Russia also proved difficult, although the Russian Revolution of 1917 eased pressures temporarily. Overall, the war drained the empire's military and financial resources, leading to famine, epidemics, and immense civilian suffering. 3. The Arab Revolt and the question of loyalty. World War I also accelerated the erosion of the empire's internal cohesion. The Arab Revolt of 1916, aided by the British, highlighted the growing nationalism among Arabs and the declining legitimacy of Ottoman rule. As Arab forces worked in conjunction with the Allies, it became clear that the empire was struggling to maintain allegiance even within its core territories. 4. The Armistice of Mudros and Foreign Occupation. In October 1918, the Ottoman Empire signed the Armistice of Mudros, effectively ending its participation in World War I. This led to Allied occupation of key cities, including Istanbul and Smyrna, Izmir, severely undermining the empire's sovereignty. The occupation provoked nationalist sentiments among the Turkish population, leading to resistance movements against both Ottoman and foreign rulers. 5. The Treaty of Sèvres. Dismemberment and humiliation. In 1920, the Treaty of Sèvres was signed, marking the official partitioning of the Ottoman Empire. The treaty granted large portions of Anatolia to Greece, established French and British mandates in the Middle East, and promised a homeland for the Armenians and Kurds. The empire was reduced to a rump state, essentially subject to foreign control. 6. The rise of Turkish nationalism and the establishment of modern Turkey. The harsh terms of the Treaty of Sèvres led to widespread resentment and fueled the rise of Turkish nationalism, spearheaded by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. A series of military campaigns against both occupying Allied forces and rival nationalist groups eventually led to the nullification of the Treaty of Sèvres and the signing of the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. This treaty recognized the sovereignty of a new Turkish-centric state, effectively marking the end of the Ottoman Empire. Conclusion: World War I was the culmination of a long process of decline for the Ottoman Empire. Its involvement in the war exacerbated internal fissures and left it vulnerable to foreign occupation and partitioning. The empire's military defeats, coupled with political misjudgments, led to its dismemberment by the Allied powers. However, the legacy of World War I also laid the groundwork for the establishment of modern Turkey, as the crisis catalyzed a nationalist movement committed to state-building and modernization. Thus, while World War I may have been the final nail in the coffin for the Ottoman Empire, it also served as a catalyst for the birth of a new nation-state emerging from the empire's ashes.